Okay, so without more ado, I'll introduce what I wanted to do, which is the people who are holding the purse strings for this, which is DESNZ. Is that right? Yes, very good. Again, I don't think there's any use particularly in asking them too many awkward questions at the moment, but I'm sure they've got a lot of interesting things to say. And the person who's going to say it is Nicola O'Dowd, who's a senior policy advisor at DESNZ, leading on work to deliver the Power CCUS project within track 1 of the cluster. So I guess that's a little bit focused, isn't it? And we did at one point hope to have a lot of power projects, but we're starting out with one. But everybody's got to start somewhere, I suppose. We've also got the Ben Keck somewhere who's involved in the Power CCS project, so it's all happening here. Nicola's basic background is in seismic and in exploration, originally for oil, but shifted over into CCS and joined, I think it's about 3 years ago, and followed really the most interesting time that we've had in the sector, as we've gone from really having some ideas, going through all the details, and I'm sure Nicola will go into some of those, where you actually come up with a project that's legal, commercially viable, and then hopefully will work when it's actually delivered. But the biggest part at the moment is getting to a point where you can have a contract that you can make FID on. And having seen a little bit peripherally, all I can say is I really take my hat off to all of the people in industry and in government who are working on this, because it doesn't look very much to say make FID, but boy, oh boy, oh boy, there is a huge amount of work in that. And I think it probably is at this stage more work than the technical side of things, which at least we have some decades of history. But as Nicola's sort of career path shows, DESNZ and industry have had to invent this process in just a few years, really without an awful lot to build on, I think. But anyway, I'm sure Nicola will tell us about that, so the floor's yours, Nicola.
Thank you. Yep. So yeah, thank you. So I have Nicola O'Dowd, Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. I don't think that we've actually officially been allowed to call it DESNZ internally yet, but that's where we are. It's a pleasure to be here this morning and opening the conference with you guys and being full of a room full of like-minded people who are, I am sure, avidly following every step that we're doing and kind of eagerly awaiting our kind of updates. So today I'm going to talk a little bit, I can start the presentation, I guess that's probably quite useful. I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we've got to this point and how we are kind of in the situation where we're looking at parallel complex systems with different capture projects linking to transport and storage sites. And I want to take you through a little bit through the process of how we got here, give you an update on where we're at, and then looking forward to the future and what our vision is kind of moving forwards. Because I think we have real confidence in CCUS and ambitions taking this on. So I am sure that many of you have seen this diagram before. It was first published in the Net Zero strategy back in 2021. The reason I've included a diagram from a few years ago is because it's got a really clear message, and we believe that CCUS is a necessity and it's not an option. So the Net Zero strategy was published back in October in 2021. It was a kind of first of a kind document for a major economy, and it documented out the pathways that we needed to take to get to net zero by 2050. And you can see the dark black line is that pathway that we need to take up through to the mid-2030s and beyond 2040s, reducing down from that baseline do nothing emissions with the dashed line. You can see the impact that initially we're going to see through domestic transport, converting to EVs with the big red wedge right at the very top. And then kind of the orange wedge again, heat and buildings is an obvious place here. We can improve insulation and we can transfer from gas boilers to heat pumps. And that, again, that makes this big contribution. But then when you kind of look at the mustard wedge with kind of harder to abate industrial sectors, and you look at the bright blue in the power sector. This is where we believe that CCS plays its essential part in us meeting our carbon 6 targets. The dark blue wedge right at the bottom as we kind of come in from 2030 onwards, again, this is another CCS factor where we want greenhouse gas removals. So yeah, essentially, this graph was kind of published 3 or 4 years ago, and the message hasn't changed. In fact, recent developments in the last 18 months only kind of reinforce this message that we want to kind of continue with CCS. So we believe that the UK is uniquely placed to achieve this. The geography, kind of out on the UK continental shelf, we have the capacity to have up to 78 billion tonnes worth of CO2 storage. That's a phenomenal amount. That's actually a really significant number. And we've got 27 storage licenses allocated at present, 21 from the recent carbon storage licensing round and 6 previously direct awarded, of which two our clusters, HyNet and ECC, have got. You know, we have the expertise in this country. We're a centre of engineering excellence. We've got huge years of experience with the oil and gas sector and petrochemical sector. We've got the infrastructure set up from these sectors as well. So, and then the policy positions that we're in, you know, through the governmental policy, and the amount that we've developed, we've got, you know, stable regulatory regimes. We're currently now in a position where we are negotiating with 8 capture projects. We've got 4 clusters in negotiation. There's 12 more in development. Potentially there are 90 projects in planning across the UK. This is a really strong method showing how much we are pushing forward and we're driving this through. You know, and because that we can see that actually we've been, you know, we're within the top 5 within the carbon CCUS readiness index, kind of monitoring actual development of CCUS in the country. And we think that all of this is going to boost the economy, bring in jobs. You know, we can bring in, you know, there's potentially 4 to 5 billion gross value added from CCUS exports. That puts us on the global stage. We want to be a global leader in all of this. How did we get here? So John mentioned that we are currently in a position where we're driving forward our CCUS ambitions with these complex parallel projects. And this isn't where we started. And many of you know that this isn't our first rodeo. This isn't our first attempt at this. Way back in 2007, we launched our first UKCCS competition. It was high risk, it was challenging, and ultimately, you know, it came to a point where we couldn't agree mutually agreeable terms, and, you know, for the government, value for money and affordability were a real concern. So we tried again in 2012. We launched our second competition, and this time, we decided to approach this as a full chain model. So you want to start from generation all the way through to storage. And again, we found that the kind of cross-chain risks in this model, we couldn't properly allocate the cross-chain risks, and potentially we saw that it was going to increase costs. So even though those 2 competitions weren't successful, we had a lot of learnings. We understood a little bit more about the commercial viability and the technical viability. We understood about great deal about the risks, the overall costs for carbon capture. You know, we ended up with some feed design studies and key knowledgeable deliverables that are out in the public. And we were able to digest these and embed them into kind of future policy making. We have our CCUS action plan, which is 2018. This is where we wanted to become a global leader and really show the potential of carbon capture and storage in the UK. And then equally, I think the landscape changed somewhat. There was another sense of urgency when it came to climate change. We had the net zero strategy, we had our carbon 6 budget targets, we had the Boris's 10-point plan. And moving along with this and kind of pushing ahead, you know, we then put in our ambitions for 20 to 30 million tonnes worth per year. And we built in all of our learnings, and in 2021 we launched our current campaign and our current cluster sequencing project. So we recognised that single projects that were individual projects and located kind of independently of anywhere else, that wasn't the solution. We needed to, so we've come in and we've brought it into industrial clusters. We've got different projects. We've got different capture projects. We've got industrial capture projects, hydrogen projects, energy power sector projects, GGRs, greenhouse gas removals. So we're going to co-locate these in industrial clusters, co-located next to the storage sites. And we're now working on kind of collaborating through these complex parallel systems. We've done this basically to maximize the benefits, ensure we've got value for money, bring in the economies of scale. And so far, we're as far ahead and as far advanced as we can, and we're at a real kind of exciting period in this. So, as I've said, kind of in addition, you know, we've come to this pinnacle, and 2023 was a big year for us. Collectively, we've made huge progress, and you as an industry kind of keep pushing us harder and harder for more. You know, we've published over 40 publications and announcements on CCUS policy last year. You know, that's a huge amount that we're actually working on and towards. We passed the Energy Act. That was the largest piece of energy legislation was passed last year. It received royal assent in October last year. We've made huge progress with our first two clusters with HyNet and ECC. We are negotiating with 8 capture projects. We have a £20 billion commitment to the CCUS sector and developing the sector. We've also kind of pushed ahead, and we're showing that actually we're not going to have a single point. We're looking at our expansion on our Track 1 clusters. We launched our HyNet Track 1 clusters last year. We reached the heads of terms with the TNS for ECC, which is a significant point in pushing ahead for their Track 1 expansion, pending the store readiness. We've identified our 3rd and 4th clusters. Last year, we set an expression of interest, and we determined that through the eligibility criteria, that Acorn and Viking are the best placed to move ahead with our Track 2. You know, when we talk about a cluster sequencing program, we are starting to see that sequencing come in. We recognise that where we need to get to is to sign the deal with FID and get these Track 1 clusters up and moving. And that's what we expect to do in 2024. So with regards to Track 1, the first element we want to do, we want to conclude our negotiations, and we want to reach our financial investment decision for our first Track 1 projects. We want to be over in HyNet, looking, you know, we've got projects there, we've got industrial projects, energy from waste projects. They're going to upgrade infrastructure and invest in new infrastructure for hydrogen projects and supplying hydrogen to the local area. Over on the East Coast cluster, again, we've got kind of hydrogen projects and industrial carbon capture projects. We've also got net zero power Teesside. It's the first dispatchable power plant with CCUS technology. It's supposed to be a responsive plant. It's not going to, you know, it's not going to displace any of the renewable sources. You know, this is pushing ahead for energy security. We're hoping, you know, we're coming to a point now, we're going to select our projects for HyNet expansion. You know, we had an expression of interest back in February, and the deadline for submissions is tomorrow. So if there's anyone here who's got a few more things to type up, you've got till 11:59 tomorrow. So fingers crossed that's going to be going well. We're going to launch the expansion process for ECC. As I said, we've reached our heads of terms, and alongside kind of, you know, affordability, value for money, looking at the store readiness, we hope to kind of consider the best timing to launch our Track 1 expansion with ECC. We want to launch a process for the Track 2 clusters. And moving ahead with Track 2, again, you know, I've spoken a little bit about the learnings that we've had kind of coming to this place, and we're learning, pushing forwards into the future. With regards to Track 2, we're operating an anchor and build out kind of phase. We want to have projects that are mature, and we can, speed and scalability is a real priority for us in this instance. We want to ensure that the next line of projects, we can optimize kind of the early storage capacities and get the mature projects, and then also have a plan for development and expansion in the future. You know, we're looking to have a self-sustaining market, and this is kind of our next step in towards the transition for this. In addition to all of these actions that we want with regards to deployment, we've got a call for evidence on on-pipeline transport. You know, we want to be able to decarbonize in industries that aren't co-located next to a store. We want to be able to offer storage on a global scale. We're also going to have a consultation on the competitive allocation for CCUS, consultation third-party access, again, kind of looking at sort of this self-sustaining market. And then we're going to have a call for evidence as well on CO2 imports. So we are driving, we're pushing, there's a lot that we're still very ambitious with regards to this. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about our CCUS vision. We published this back in December 2023, and our vision is to make the UK a global leader in carbon capture and storage, creating a self-sustaining CCUS sector that supports thousands of jobs and reduces emissions to ensure a better environment for future generations. So we have 4 guiding principles for this. We want to decarbonise for future generations. Take you back to the first slide that I showed, and we showed just how critical that we believe CCUS really is for decarbonising. We want to be a global leader. As I said in the second slide, we have the expertise, we have the infrastructure, we're perfectly located geographically, and we want to help build other countries build at CCUS. We want to ensure that there's learnings are kind of passed on, and we've got key knowledge deliverables that are kind of delivered, and as well as using kind of our stores to sequester other countries' emissions. We want to create growth. We want to support levelling up. We believe that through carbon capture, we can support up to 50,000 jobs. We want to create investment opportunities as well, kind of through support for this UKCCS sector. And ultimately, we want to build a self-sustaining sector. We want confidence from industry to be able to come into this market and work, and without kind of the level of leadership and support that is currently being provided by the UK government. We see that this isn't a flick of a switch. This is going to take time, this is going to take a plan. And our thoughts are that we need a 3-phase model here. We are currently in this market creation phase, and we think this will continue until 2030. Between 2030 and 2035, we believe that we need to move through a market transition phase. We need to scale up the amount of carbon capture within this phase. We need to ensure that the market and the industry, we need to build confidence in this, and we need to ensure that we've got kind of the right regulations in place to support this and to allow for it, and for it to grow and to evolve. And the ultimate plan and the ultimate vision and goal is for it to be a self-sustaining market from about 2035 onwards. Currently in this creation phase, we're looking at our first 4 cluster storage sites, and we're working through this. And we hope that this will end up with a pipeline of storage sites to a portfolio of stores that we can be competitively priced solutions for the UK. We're looking at deploying across all sectors. It's really important that we can decarbonise, industry and the energy sector. We're looking at, we've got energy from waste. We want to continue this deployment across all sectors, but what we really want to see is we need to see some growth in the GGRs and our negative emissions. And that's where we hope that we will be by the time we reach our phase 3. We're looking at the transport and storage networks. We need to set up the right regulations now to have independent transport and storage networks in the future. We're looking to expand them, and we want a system that's capable of meeting our CCUS net zero contributions by the time we're into 2035, moving towards 2050. We want to ensure that this has non-pipeline transport options and solutions as well. We can't rely just on pipe solutions. Our ambitions are beyond this. And currently, as I said, the government is supporting. We are competitively allocating the clusters, and we've got into the levels of subsidy. We want to see this through the transition phase, that there'll be reduced support, and the still understand there'll probably be a competitive allocation, but ultimately into a self-sustaining position where there's low levels of support. Contracts can be negotiated between the capture projects and the transport and storage projects independently of us. And as I said, we're establishing these regulatory frameworks now. We are spending time and energy and investment to really kind of consider how these frameworks need to mature as the sector matures, and ensure that we've got the right kind of regulatory bodies, and that we all have the similar vision and similar understanding and driving forwards in the same way. We believe it's going to create economic growth. We believe that there's going to be value added from this. We're going to create jobs. We want to support jobs and growth in the heartlands. And equally, we want to have a strong export line as well. We want to ensure that our supply chains are capable. We want to understand that we have all of this kind of in place and that we are building, and again, that we can take this out and we can be global leaders within this, and that we can distribute our knowledge and our skills and our expertise across this global world. And we're hoping that through all of this and across this period of time, that the public perception that we go through an increasing awareness of what CCUS is, and that we get buy-in and support and growing acknowledgement of the sector. And ultimately, hopefully, by the time that we are in our phase 3, in our self-sustaining phase, that there is widespread support. And so, yeah, that brings me to summarise. I think there is a lot of interest in the UK CCUS. There's a substantial appetite amongst investors to back carbon capture, and the scale that the UK offers is unique. You can see that we have huge potential storage sites. We've got 90 plus CCUS projects in planning and underway. We've come a long way. We've reached a lot. 2023 was a landmark year for us. And now, for us to reach our goals and to be able to execute our ambition, we really need to meet FID with our Track 1 projects. We really need to see that our Track 1 projects aren't static, and that we can expand and we can grow and we can fill the remaining capacity that we have in our stores, that we can appraise our newest stores and actually build upon the industrial clusters that we've got right now. We want to engage with our Track 2 clusters. We're changing the model somewhat. We really see that we need to scale up and we need to speed up. And we're putting the processes in place for this. And we need to continue to think big, continue to be ambitious, continue to drive forwards. Yeah, and I think with that, I'll conclude. Thanks.